I'm Daniel, and the day my wife Mia told me to relax about carpooling turned into one of the funniest and most revealing experiences of my life, all because I decided to invite Peter's wife, Sarah, along without telling anyone in advance. Mia had been reminding me for weeks to stop overthinking the logistics of driving Lily and her friends to school, insisting that I was making it a bigger deal than it needed to be, and that the kids just needed someone responsible behind the wheel. I want to cooperate. But every time I thought about how Peter, a neighbor and friend of ours, always seemed to dominate the conversation during drop-offs and pickups, I felt a mix of irritation and curiosity about how our little daily routines could suddenly become so performative. So, on a Thursday morning, when Peter arrived in his usual oversized SUV, chatting on his phone and barely noticing that Lily was trying to get settled, I casually mentioned that Sarah might join us for the ride that day. He blinked, momentarily distracted, while Mia, standing by the door with a bemused smile, shrugged as if silently saying, "Let's see how this plays out." Sarah arrived 10 minutes later, cheerful and calm, carrying coffee and snacks, completely unaware of the tension she was about to diffuse or amplify, depending on your perspective. From the moment she stepped into the SUV, the dynamic shifted entirely. Peter, who usually monopolized conversation with stories about his work and neighborhood gossip, suddenly had to share attention, navigating not just me and Lily, but now Sarah's witty commentary and playful observations. I could tell Mia was trying not to laugh at the back seat, watching me quietly revel in the subtle chaos I had orchestrated without malice, just curiosity. The ride itself became a series of mini revelations. Peter realized he had underestimated how attentive Sarah could be, how her questions gently exposed gaps in his storytelling, and how her perspective made the mundane drive much more lively. I noticed Lily laughing at moments she usually wouldn't, enjoying the unexpected mix of personalities in the car, and I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that inviting Sarah hadn't caused drama. It created balance, and even a little amusement. Throughout the drive, the conversation flowed naturally, covering school projects, weekend plans, and even lighthearted debates about the best local coffee spots. I found myself leaning into humor of the situation, asking questions that subtly highlighted Peter's overconfidence in driving etiquette and time management, while Sarah responded with playful, insightful commentary that made him pause more than once. At one point, Peter tried to assert his dominance in conversation, only for Sarah to counter with a clever anecdote about a previous carpool adventure, and the shift in energy was immediate. I glanced at Mia, who simply rolled her eyes with a smile that said, "Exactly what I expected." In those moments, I realized that my initial hesitation about carpooling had been unnecessary. The kids, the adults, the interactions, all had the potential to be enjoyable if we allowed room for collaboration and humor. By inviting Sarah, I had not just balanced the social dynamics, but also created a space where everyone, including me, could participate fully without the subtle competitiveness that sometimes colors friendships. By the time we arrived at the school, Lily and her friends were laughing. Sarah had earned Peter's respect, and Mia looked at me with that quiet approval that says, "Well done, but don't make this a habit." As we stepped out of the SUV, I realized how a simple act of inclusion could shift moods, relationships, and even perceptions of leadership in something as ordinary as carpooling. Peter thanked me awkwardly, clearly recognizing that he had underestimated the value of collaboration, while Sarah laughed, teasing him gently about how he had lost control of the morning's narrative. Mia and I exchanged a knowing glance, understanding that our little experiment had worked not because of confrontation or control, but because of timing, inclusion, and the willingness to let someone else guide the dynamic for a change. On the way home, I reflected on how small choices, like inviting Sarah, could make routine experiences richer, more enjoyable, and surprisingly revealing about people's true personalities, patience, and sense of humor. That day, carpooling was no longer a chore. It was a lesson in observation, patience, and the quiet power of thoughtful inclusion, and for once, I felt confident that I had orchestrated it perfectly.